Hi, I'm Dr. Kelly Starrett, and welcome to the world of AbMat. When the AbMat was created, it was designed to really do two things. One was to allow for the abdominal musculature to have a greater range of motion and a greater stretch, and thereby a greater training effect for ground-based abdominal training. The second was to try to reduce some of the sort of side effects of poor spinal mechanics that sometimes led people to irritation and led to less effective abdominal training. So you may have noticed you have a few choices in terms of AbMats and AbMat materials. It's pretty simple. The original AbMat is made from foam and vinyl and is hand sewed in the United States. And in fact, all AbMats are made in the United States. You have a choice of harder or durometer for those of us who are a little bit bigger or want a little bit more support in the spine. And you can go to the new and updated version of the AbMat, which is made from a single piece of molded foam, making this virtually impossible to break down over time. And maybe a better choice in a commercial setting where someone needs to kind of keep it cleaner more often. So let's have a little anatomy lesson. When we're looking at the abdominal musculature, and we're specifically in this situation talking about the rectus abdominis, the six-pack, the long strap musculature of the trunk, the insertion are from the bottom of the sternum all the way to the pubic bone, all the way down here in the pelvis. So one of the things that happens when you lay on an AbMat is you're able to create a larger distance and a greater range of motion for those abdominals. So one of the things that we get is a greater sort of moment arm and better action, so the abdominals have to work a little bit harder. The second thing that happens when you're on an AbMat is that the lumbar spine is able to be maintained in its natural, more normal lordotic curve. So we're able to create a large global extension in the lumbar spine. So what ends up happening is that when the abdominals contract, the abs are able to pull on these big components together, and what we don't see happening, like on traditional floor-based exercise, is that the lumbar doesn't flatten out and then the rest of the trunk move. We're able to maintain normal, more natural curves in the spine, which makes it a lot more comfortable. When we're typically exercising on the ground without an AbMat, what ends up happening is that the lumbar compresses and then the abs move. So we get, instead of abdominal motion happening, the first moment is that the lumbar compresses to the floor, kind of flattens out the curve, and then the trunk begins to move. And that can be, of course, very safe, and it's not an issue of that, but sometimes can create discomfort in people, and it creates a moment of shear. So once we're exercising, what we're trying to do is say, hey, is there a way for us to maintain better function of the normal sort of moving components of the spine and trunk? And there is. You just have to use an AbMat. Flexion of the trunk and exposure of trunk flexion under control is a huge component to a healthy back and a strong trunk and midsection that applies to nearly every aspect of your life. Now, one of the things you can see here is that Juliet is in a little bit of a globally extended position, but she may feel like it's more comfortable to use the AbMat in a different orientation. So if she rolls off to the side and we flip this around, this may actually feel better for her. And what I want you to understand is that it doesn't matter which side of the AbMat you have near your pelvis or which side is near your head. Ultimately, it's about choice and your own anthropometry or body organization, body shapes. So if you're like me and you have a little bit bigger booty, you might feel like you have a better impact on that with a little bit of more support near the trunk, or using the thicker side towards the glute end of your body. But bottom line is, either way is completely appropriate. So when Juliet does a traditional floor-based ab curl-up or crunch or sit-up, notice that happens when she initiates the sit-up. There's a lot of crunching of the ab first before there's actually any motion happening. And what's happening there is that the lumbar spine is starting to flatten out before she can actually create moment. So the lumbar spine has moved, the abs have done some work, but they haven't traveled a big range of motion. And remember, what we're really trying to do is keep the lumbar curve here, but have that abdominal musculature work in a greater range of motion. So when we have her bridge up and we place the AbMat underneath her back, watch the difference in how her trunk behaves as she does and performs that curl up. Immediately we see traveling of the abdominals and the trunk. There's not a moment of the spine finding a position on which it can leverage, and the shoulders begin to travel almost immediately. One more time again. And so what we see is that an earlier and more complete action of the abdominal musculature. The AbMat's been part of our training environment since 2005, and we've found countless more uses besides just abdominal training, from balance work and rehab, to mobilization work, to supporting the spine and movements like floor press. The AbMat is a great addition to your training tools.